Well, it's been 2 weeks since the FBI conducted a court-approved search of former President Donald Trump's home. And we're starting to get a sense for how that and other investigations around Mr. Trump are influencing Republican voters. And tomorrow, New York and Florida hold primary elections that will test the direction of the Democratic Party. To analyze all of this, we turn now to Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter and Annie Linskey of The Washington Post. And Tamara Keith is away. We're so glad to have both of you, though. We have some new NBC News poll numbers. I would love to get your take on those investigations into former President Trump. The majority of people asked do say they want those to continue, but the party breakdown is interesting. Amy, take a look at this. 92% of Democrats say the investigation should continue. 21% of Republicans, 61% of independents. Does that number surprise you?
Yeah, I think going into the hearings on January 6th, the feeling was that this wasn't going to change voters' opinions about the focus of the election, the salience of this issue in the upcoming midterm elections. But I think what has happened over the course of the last few weeks is the attention has been almost solely on President Trump and the role he played on January 6th. There's been no defense on the part of Republicans to make this a more complicated or maybe muddy the waters on this issue because Republicans boycotted the January 6th committee. And then you put on top of it, as you pointed out, Mar-a-Lago and the focus on the other legal challenges, shall we say, for the former president in places like Georgia and New York. And so for the last few weeks, what voters have been hearing a lot about, whether they're actually paying attention or not, but in the sort of ambient noise has been about Donald Trump, the election denial, and the questions around whether or not what he did was illegal in a place like Georgia. And I think voters, they do care about it. What we're going to have to find out is whether it's more important to them than other issues that we know are on the table this election.
Right. And there's been some question, too, about whether these investigations could actually drive voter enthusiasm among Republicans, right? But Annie, I want to ask you about Democratic voter enthusiasm, because enthusiasm, as the poll shows, among Republicans remains high, about 68%. It's striking when you look at these numbers. And again, this is a new NBC News poll. When you look at the growth among Democratic voters who say they have a high interest in the midterms, it's now at 66%. They've basically closed the gap with Republicans, up from 61% in May and 50% in March. What do you make of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I've been talking to Democratic and even Republican strategists, they are acknowledging that they initially thought abortion and the Roe versus Wade decision would be, helpful for Democrats around the margins. I think what's happening and what Democrats and Republicans are both saying to me is they were wrong about that. And it seems like it's caused, a bigger shift in, voter enthusiasm among Democrats than they had initially thought. And it's kind of rare, for a strategist to admit that they're wrong, like halfway through, like before there's even been an election. But you're seeing it with increasing voter registration among women in, across the board in a number of states. And so that's where, and the other piece is abortion has been in the news in a way that a lot of people, I think, didn't anticipate. They did not realize that you'd have these national stories about a 10-year-old becoming pregnant and her family feeling that she needed to cross state lines to get the care that was needed. And I think these stories there's been a drumbeat of them over the summer to where there's been kind of it hasn't faded from the news the way that many, I think, expected that it would.
Yeah. And I also think that many Republicans thought that the Mar-a-Lago search would increase Republican enthusiasm, right? You heard, this is going to help the base. Actually, it's been the opposite. When you look at the NBC poll, 29% of Democrats now say that is a top issue for them, this issue of a threat to democracy. 17% of Republicans feel similarly. So it has energized somebody, but it's energized the other party, not Republicans.
That threats to democracy number I thought was really interesting. But meanwhile, we should say we're continuing to track the primary races leading up to those the general election in November. We've had a lot of focus about the Republican races, what that means for the direction of the party. But tomorrow, New York and Florida, a couple of big primary races there that have a lot to say about the direction of the Democratic Party, I think. Amy, what's at stake here as you look at it? What are you watching specifically?
Well, we were talking about this earlier, but I'm more interested actually in a special election that's happening tomorrow than even the primaries. And you're right, there's a lot of focus on the primaries because in New York you have a number of well-known, longtime Democratic incumbents. Some are facing off against each other in redistricted districts. But the district that we're paying a lot of attention to is in the Hudson Valley. This is a very evenly divided district. Biden won it by just 2 points in the last election. This is a place where we're going to get our first sort of road test on the messaging, especially on abortion. Democrats leaning into the issue of abortion, Republicans, not surprisingly, leaning into the economy and inflation. And again, it's a special election. It's in August, so we have to always be careful to put those caveats out there. But it certainly can give us a sense for what voters, how those issues are playing with voters in the kind of swing districts that Republicans absolutely need to win if they're going to have a big night in November.
What about you, Annie? What are you watching?
Yeah, I think when you look at the primaries in particular, and this is a rare week where there are some big Democratic primaries. For the last few weeks, it's always been sort of focused on the Republican side. But with the Democratic primaries, there are some big tension points, and one is with Sean Patrick Maloney. He is the head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the top Democrat who's in charge of getting other Democrats elected, and he is facing a tough challenge from the left. And his people say he feels comfortable. The conventional wisdom is that he should be fine, but it's August, and it's very hard to poll in these kinds of races, and you don't really know what the shape of the electorate's going to be. And so I think that is where you could have the biggest headline. Is we know of course, if he loses, it would be an earthquake for Democrats. But even if it comes close, it's going to be a real test of that progressive wing of the party and how much strength they have. And so far this year, their strength has been mixed. But this is going to give you either sort of a capstone of, oh wow, they have this unexpected strength, and you're going to have a new progressive star coming out of New York, and we know how that looks. It's a lot of enthusiasm that can be ginned up from the base. Or it's kind of a establishment strikes back narrative. So it'll be one of the two.
Meanwhile, it is August, and I do have to ask you, we haven't seen much of President Biden or Vice President Harris out on the trail. They are coming off a couple of big wins, right, legislatively. Does it surprise you we haven't seen more of them?
They may go out to sell the big wins that they've had, but you're not going to see a whole lot of Democrats inviting them to come and campaign with them. The other thing in that NBC poll that puts a little bit of cold water on enthusiasm among Democrats is the fact that President Biden's job approval rating is still very low, especially by historical standards, only at 42% job approval rating. His handling of the economy deeply underwater. So he's still not exactly popular. I think what has happened is these past few weeks, the focus has been on the former president, not on the current president. That has actually, and abortion, which I agree with, and that has actually helped Democrats more than the success that Biden and Democrats in Congress have had.
A few seconds left. Do you think we'll see more of them on the trail?
Well, in some places. The Washington Post just did a piece where we polled 60 Democratic campaigns to say, look, do you want Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to come? And most of them did not respond to us. And the ones that did, there was a lot of hesitation, let me say.
Silence, as they say, sometimes speaks volumes.
Yes.
Annie Linskey, Amy Walter, thank you so much.
Welcome.